Hi everyone, we're here today to talk about the second episode of Season 2 of House of the Dragon entitled Rhaenyra the Cruel. Now I'll start this off by saying that one of the things that really attracted me to this show when I watched it last year, yes, I was a little late to the party, but what I loved about it was just how messy all the stories were, how messy all the characters were. And this week's episode is no exception. It was a disaster. And to me, for a drama, that makes for excellent television. It was messy in the best possible way, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So I'm going to do a recap, not a recap of the show, but just talk about the different characters and the different story beats that happened and things that I found amusing or interesting in some way. And just an FYI, I have not read the books, so I don't know what happened in the source material. So if you feel compelled to leave a message, leave a comment in the comment area, please refrain from including any book spoilers, okay? So let's get into it. Let's start off with the Hightowers and the Targaryens. So I'm talking about Otto and Alicent and Aegon. So we see Alicent and Otto are talking, and Alicent's very upset about the death of her grandson Jaehaerys, but she's more so upset about the impact it's going to have on her daughter Helaena, more so than the fact that the baby is dead, because she said, oh, you know, what's done is done, which is kind of crazy. Like, this is your grandchild. This is a toddler. I would think you'd be equally upset for your daughter, and also the fact that this little kid's life was snuffed out before he had a chance to live it. But, you know, that maybe that's just me. And of course, Otto, with no sense of sorrow on his face or anything like that, is looking at the political usefulness of this. And so he said, if we were to have a procession go down, you know, the main streets, we can garner sympathy and support from the townspeople, at the same time painting Rhaenyra and Team Black as those evildoers over there, which is true. But do you need to take advantage of this little baby? And so Alicent, seeing the benefits of this, when they present this to Aegon, he's like, I don't want my child like traipsing, being paraded around the street like some kind of an ornament in this political game. But of course, you know, he went along with it eventually. But Alicent was, you know, emphasizing that this is a good look for us. We should do this. And then when Otto tells her, okay, you and Helaena, you're going to be the ones in the procession. I don't want to do it. Why? Because she's weak. I can't stand Alicent. Of course, Aegon immediately thinks that Rhaenyra had something to do with this, and while she didn't directly, somebody on her team did. Otto is telling him, you know, calm down, keep calm, and all this stuff, but he's not. He's very emotional because the son died, and also because he has a terrible personality and he can't control his feelings, and he's just a violent person to begin with. And he's blaming everybody. He's blaming Criston Cole, which I have no problem blaming Criston with whatever, but we know which bed he was in. He said he was done for the night. He wasn't the person responsible for, you know, making sure that nobody was able to get up in those areas, but still. And then later Larys comes in and he mentions that it was a rat catcher, I think, or he mentions that they have one person in custody and they are going to find out the rest later on. Let's jump to Team Black. So we see Rhaenyra has just gotten the news of the baby dying, and she is very upset, very offended that people speculate that she had something to do with this. And at some point you see Rhaenys looking over at Daemon, and Daemon throughout the whole thing is just like, doop-da-doo, and looking very smug, as Daemon likes to look. But Rhaenys looks at him and is like, I know, you have something to do with this. And then later on, Daemon says something I can't recall, but Rhaenyra's like, that's a little suspicious. And they go into the room and they have a talk. Rhaenyra and Daemon go into the other room and they hash things out. So Rhaenyra's like, what did you do? Why did you do this? And he said, well, you know what? I told them to find Aemond and they found Jaehaerys instead. So like, you know, things happen, whatever. And she said, like, well, were you explicit? Did he give alternatives? And he says, well, you know, that they misinterpreted what I said and they killed the kid. Like, that's not my responsibility. So, like, whatever. Again, Damon, like he's so like he's so flippant, he's so casual with these types of things because he just wants to achieve what he feels he needs to for like whatever reason. He doesn't care about anybody else. And then they kind of got into like a fight about their whole dynamic. And so one thing, like Rhaenyra is like, you knew how messed up your uncle was when you were a teenager. You knew how driven he was. You know all the machinations he pulled. It's like when he said that he was going to marry Mysaria and that she was pregnant and that he needed the dragon eggs for his new baby when none of that was happening. Like, he is a liar and he wants to be king, but he doesn't want to be king, but he wants to be king. And she was saying to him, like, this isn't about, because he kept on mentioning that, oh, my brother's position. He's like, no, it's not your brother's position. It's not Viserys' position. He's dead. It's mine. And Aegon has it. So if you need to help me get the position and stop worrying about my dad, even though he was going on about how Otto was weak and he only put her in place because putting his daughter or his child who was a daughter would stick it to Daemon. And so he's basically saying that Rhaenyra is not entitled to the spot, which is such a terrible thing to say to your wife. But, and then she's like, you know what, like, this is my birthright, my this, my that. And they got into a bit of a spat. And then Daemon gets up, he throws everything off the table, gets up in a very menacing way towards Rhaenyra as though he was about to hit her. He doesn't. He gets a little too close to her face, and I think he like pushes her face back a little bit like that, and he says, "Was it not me who, when the one of the Erryks got the crown? Was it not me who put it on your head?" It's like, yeah, well, maybe it was, but he's acting as though she doesn't deserve the position that he has, and she was just, she was giving it to him straight because, yeah, when she was in labor for that unfortunate stillbirth she had like 2 episodes ago, she's in the room screaming and everybody at the council table could hear her, and he's just, running logistics, like doing all these things. He wasn't there for the family. This is the second time he hasn't been for a wife who's gone through a terrible labor because he is not a good person or father, and that's evidenced 2 seconds later, when he storms out of the room, he sees his daughter in the hallway and like gives her like a dirty look. And she's like, Dad, like, what's going on? He's like, what is wrong with you? And then he takes off on his dragon, I think. And then Baela comes into the room and she can see that things are upturned in the room. And Rhaenyra asked her to, the next morning, go to, I forget where, on the dragon because she relies on her. Because she can rely on her stepdaughter more than she can her husband. So that happens, and then later on, we see Baela talking to Jacaerys, just having a bit of a conversation with her betrothed, talking about their dads and how he really loved both of his dads, and Baela thinks she hates her dad because her dad is Daemon, and Daemon is terrible. Earlier on, we see Alan and Addam. So Alan is a man who saved the sea snake, who the sea snake is kind of elevated, and Addam is his brother who we meet for the first time. And so he's just talking about, oh, I heard about your new position. You need to take advantage of it. You can help yourself out. You can help me out. It wasn't really too much going on. They seem like they're, they have a good relationship as brothers. Later on, we see Addam at the sea. He has a bucket and he's picking up a bunch of different artifacts from the shore. So maybe oysters or different shells and so on. And at one point we see he picks up a crab. And then overhead we see a dragon. And I don't think we could see who it was. I don't know if that was Baela the next day or if that was Daemon. I'm not really quite sure how Addam and Alan really tie into the entire thing at the moment, but it's been introduced, so there's that. There's a scene with Rhaenyra and Mysaria, the White Worm, and basically she comes out of her cell and she asks Rhaenyra can you pay the debt that your husband told me he would pay? And again, she's just a conveyor of information. She doesn't really have any political ambitions, or at least she says she doesn't. I believe her. She just wants to get paid because she knows things. She has worked her way up from being, a lady of the night to having a house and like being a community leader and stuff like that. She doesn't care about all the other things, but like if you're going to ask her for information, you're going to have to pay for it. What you do with that information is your business, Daemon or anybody else. But if you're going to ask for it, give me my money. And so she asks Rhaenyra to pay on her husband's behalf. And at this point, Rhaenyra recognizes like, oh, you're the one who I saw in season 2, season 1, who Daemon pretended was his wife to be and who was pregnant and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, he's still scheming. He's still lying. And so she has a bit of, I guess, sympathy for her. And so she offers to let her go be free in a different place. She has a ship ready for her to take off, and she pays the debt that Daemon owed her. So I think that this could come in, their relationship or any intel Mysaria has can come in to be beneficial later on. But at this point, I think that's pretty much it, just introducing the fact that they now know each other and they know that she could be a good resource going forward. Now we're going to jump back to Team Greenland, and we're going to see my favorite character, Mr. Criston Cole. So Criston goes to the Arryk, who is over at, King's Landing, or, on Team Green side, who is on his lunch break, is eating his lunch, and Criston notices that his cape is dirty. So he tells him, oh, you're going to be dishonorable wearing this dirty cape. We wear white capes and we care about looks and things like this. And the guy's like, just yesterday I was traipsing through the mud with that kid that was being paraded around town. So sorry, my cape got a little dirty. And so Criston Cole, in addition to acting like an incel, he's also a micromanager. So he becomes, for somebody who is not a villain, he is a character who I just cannot stand, who I really, really hate, and who I want to see their death come sooner rather than later. Then he goes on to ask him, where were you when the beheading was happening? Why didn't you stop it? And he says, well, first off, I was with the king doing my job in the room where the king was just hanging out with his friends, but he was doing his job. And then Arryk said, well, where were you? And then Criston looks very sheepish, like, oh, like, don't ask me that because I talk a lot and I might spill where I actually was. But it's like, yeah, calm yourself down. Like, I'm pretty sure Criston is a layer above him, so maybe he should know better than Arryk. And then Criston gives Arryk a command that he must do now, interrupting his lunch. He gives him the task of going to where Rhaenyra is and killing the bitch queen. I honestly, when I was watching this, I had to pause the playback because I was like, oh my gosh, can this guy get any worse? This guy is so hung up on Rhaenyra. He needs a therapist. It's been so long. They have had no communication with each other. He doesn't even know for certain that Rhaenyra put the killer up to it, but he is so hell-bent on getting Rhaenyra. It was ridiculous. So yeah, I had to stop for about 5 minutes, and then I put the show back on. And so we said, you go to Rhaenyra's place. I need to remember the names of the different places. For somebody who's been watching Game of Thrones for all this time and House of Dragon, I forget the names of the locations. But anyway, he tells him he needs to go over there, pretend like he's his brother, Arryk. So I can never remember if it's Arryk with an E or Arryk with an A. But basically he says, go over there, pretend like you're his brother. His brother is, Rhaenyra's knight, so they won't notice, and then you can just kill her and stuff like this. And of course, he doesn't want to do it because who really wants to do that? But Criston is putting his foot down, and unfortunately, Criston has a lot of sway. He's going to get more sway later on. But he's commanded to do it, and he eventually goes to do the deed. And so we see there's a whole bunch of back and forth. Where it's kind of confusing. Mysaria sees, this guy who looks like the guy who was already in the palace. But yeah, so a lot of people are confused, like, oh, I thought you were inside. It's like, oh no, you're not paying attention. Let me in. He goes in, he gets into Rhaenyra's room and he's about to attack her. Then somebody fends him off. Eventually his brother comes and they're fighting to the death. And he gets his brother, the bad guy, he is killed first, and then the Arryk who is supposed to be watching Rhaenyra, he feels so bad that things got so close, and then he kills himself. So both the Arryks are now dead. Twin brother against twin brother, all because Criston Cole unilaterally decided that this is what he should do. So Criston is also breaking up families, breaking up brothers. So he gets even worse as things go on. Like I cannot stand him. I cannot stand him. But I'll say this. I heard that the actor Fabian Frankel has been getting a lot of hate messages on his social media accounts. So he's had to limit the stuff he posts or limit the ability of people to make comments. Don't do that, guys. If you're doing that, do not do that. Remember, as much as we're immersed in this is a television show. It's a work of fiction. Fabian is not Criston Cole. And the fact that we hate Criston Cole so much means that Fabian is doing a good job. So leave that man alone, okay? We hate Criston. We do not hate Fabian. He seems like a nice guy when I see him on like interviews and stuff. Seems like a nice guy. Even if he's like a okay guy or a mean guy, whatever, he is not Criston Cole. Going back to Team Green, we see in the town that there are a bunch of men hanging. They've been hanged because they're all rat catchers. And it's been determined that a rat catcher is somebody who was an accomplice to the other guy who killed Jacaerys, who beheaded him. And they didn't know who it was. So Aegon ordered that all the men who are rat catchers be hanged. So there are like, 18, 19 people. And then we see the one who actually did it. We see his face and we see his dog at the bottom staring up at him. And so when Otto sees this, he is upset. And the funny thing, I would say, this entire season, it must have been 2 episodes, but Otto has been so frustrated with Aegon. It is like whenever he sees him, he's like that meme of Mekhi Phifer smoking and that meme of Ben Affleck smoking, just like so frustrated, like, what are you doing now? You're messing things up. Again, you're making me so stressed out. And so he goes to him. He's in the room with Criston. And he tells Aegon, like, no, what did you do? We had so much goodwill because of how we're painting Rhaenyra to be this depraved lady who kills babies. And everyone saw your mom and your sister, sister wife, going down the procession with this baby. So we had goodwill already, but now you go and kill a bunch of common folk who are all struggling because you want to get back at one of them who you didn't know which one did it, but you killed all of them. So now that erased all the goodwill that we got, a day ago. And Aemond is like, I don't care. I need to look strong. They weren't admitting who did it, so I had to kill them all. I'm going to do what I want to because I need to do it. And Otto's like, he didn't talk to the council. He's like, no, I don't need to. And so Aemond says he doesn't care. He knew it was a rat catcher. It didn't matter if it was just one of them. He needs to get them regardless. He needs to look strong. Just as Criston looks strong because, hey, he just ordered Arryk to go kill Rhaenyra. So it's all good. And Otto's like, you young stupid people, you can't just go making unilateral decisions emotionally. You have to think. You can't just make knee-jerk reactions. And Aegon's like, oh yeah, okay. Well, maybe it's time to change hands. So you're no longer my hand anymore, Granddad. You're old news from my dad's time. Sorry, you don't work for me anymore. Give back your pin and give it to Criston. And Criston looks at him like, what? Like, seriously? What? And then he said something, I think, about like, oh, he follows his oath and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, you don't know what's going on with your mama, but, whatever. And so now Criston Cole is the hand. And Otto says something to the effect of like, you're going to regret this. This is a mistake. But hey, whatever. You do you. Later on, Otto and Alicent are talking, and he's complaining about, how we just got fired and how these kids are so reckless, they're so stupid, they're so impulsive. Why are they like this? And I thought to myself, you know why these kids are like this? I blame Otto, because Otto pimped Alicent out when she was a kid to bear heirs, to elevate their family so that their family could sit on the Iron Throne, because that's all Otto thought about. And those kids were not raised properly, even when they were little, when they were all little and they would meet up with their cousins and stuff like that. those kids ran roughshod. Alicent did a terrible job raising them, maybe because she was such a young kid herself. But the reason why the grandkids are so terrible is because the parents were terrible. Otto was a bad influence, a very big influence who they could see is all about the politics. He doesn't care about them as his grandkids. Alicent also was groomed by her dad to just think about the politics. She was a terrible mother. Like, even at the end, when she goes to Aegon's room and Aegon is legit crying. And again, I don't like Aegon, but I do think he's actually upset that his baby is dead. And she can't even go up to hug him or anything like that. Like, she's such a delinquent mother. And yeah, the kids are bad. The kids have always been bad. Look at Baela and, what's her name? Baela and Rhaenyra and Jacaerys and Luke Harris when he was alive. And all those other kids, like, they're well-behaved kids. But those Targaryen children, those Hightower Targaryens, they were raised terribly. At least the boys were. So, of course, why are you surprised that Aegon is such a terrible person? And even, I don't have much sympathy for Aemond. I have more sympathy for him than I would Aegon. But we see he's at the brothel, and he's all cuddled up with that older lady who we saw, well, older than him lady, that we saw last year, who is, like, I guess a madam or something. And he's, like, curled up in the fetal position, like, on her chest, like a baby, because he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have anybody to, not that he doesn't need babying because he's older now, but he didn't have any maternal figure, really, before. So I guess he turns to this lady for that. And he mentioned, as I suspected, like, he did not want his nephew to die, even though, again, he played a very dangerous game, but he does feel sorry for it. He regrets it. So I have that much more sympathy for him. But also, like I said last week, he admitted it. He is flattered that Daemon tried to kill him, because Daemon sees him now as a real foe, so much that he would try to kill him. So again, that Daemon-Aemond thing is working as dynamic. I'm curious to see how that will, or if it will, play out throughout the rest of the season, which I'm pretty sure it will. Getting back to Alicent and her dad, he mentions that, he's no longer in the council, he's no longer the hand. He's going to go to a different place where another son is, I think Darren, who I cannot recall ever meeting. Maybe I just blocked him out. But he is thinking that he could work that son or that grandson over there. And then, he and Alicent are talking, and then Alicent mentions that, she sinned. And he says, don't tell me about that. I gotta peace out. Again, because he is such an unfeeling father. He's like, I don't know, don't come to me with that. Don't come to me with that. And that's, right after we see Aegon crying his eyes out, and then she disappears. Again, the bad parenting goes from generation to generation. So maybe that Aegon actually cares. His future, I'm sure he'll have another son. He's young. But even maybe he'll be a better parent to his kids. The problem is, he might be a good dad in terms of playing with them, but he has no moral fiber in his being. So what could he actually pass on? So I don't know. Who knows? And then Alicent sees Criston by her door, and she's slapping him. She's mad at him. I'm presuming she's mad at him because of what he did, commanding Rhaenyra get killed unilaterally. And then he uses his, masculine wiles, and they end up sleeping together once again. This is my theory about Criston and his new job. So he's a hand now. And last week we saw Larys talking to Aegon saying, you should get a new hand. But he didn't explicitly say whether he should be the hand or if he should have a hand in finding the hand. And so clearly he didn't, because Aegon just impromptu gave Criston the job. Larys knows that Alicent and Criston are sleeping together. And of course, that's a sin. Criston is supposed to be celibate. He's supposed to have all his attention on the queen's safety and all that stuff, not his personal life. I think that Larys is going to expose Criston or threaten him with the knowledge that he has about their affair. He's going to work his way somehow, because that's what Larys does. And I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but mark my words, that's going to happen. I think. I don't know. You guys have read the book. You probably know. I don't know. So anyway, that's like basically it for the show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was very entertained, very messy. These people are disasters, and I love watching it on TV all the time. The only people in this episode who aren't messes are Rhaenys and Corlys. So we'll see how things go next week. I'm really excited. I don't think I watched the trailer. If there is one, I don't know. There are. I never see House of the Dragon trailers anyway, but I will be here next week to talk about episode 3. I would love to know, do you share my opinions? What do you think of this episode? I'd love to talk about it more. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. Put the notification bell so you see when I post a new video. And I'll see you later here on I See Melanie. Okay, bye everyone.